ready to go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I call the Plan Commission meeting for September 5th, 2023 to order. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone online for us?
We have someone online, but there is no hand raised. So I'm thinking not.
This is your last chance to raise your hand, whoever's online, if you want to speak to us. Okay, so there's no one for public comments, so we will move to the approval of minutes. Is there any discussion on the approval of minutes? Is there any objection to approve the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved unanimously. Right, so are we going to go for a staff comment first? All right. So the first item on the list is transportation element. And we're going to hear a short staff report, and then we'll move to the next element.
Yeah,
We'll move to finish what we need to do on that element.
Yes, so you've already passed a motion approving, giving a recommendation for the transportation element. John Vicente, so the engineer, is here this evening just to kind of summarize those changes, which then might kind of refresh, because this was a minute ago since you did this. But the purpose of tonight's meeting is for the commission to decide on what aspects of the element they wish to present to council. Oh, and I'm going to stop talking now and let John do some talking.
Good evening. Unfortunately, you will not be hearing from Alicia tonight. She chose to go on vacation, so I'm going to be acting as your planner for the evening. So,
okay.
God help us. So as Debbie said, we're just going to be that. Okay. Just to rehash, a lot of the major changes we made on the element was prioritizing non-motorized mobility, emphasizing the support for high capacity transit. We added level service for bikes and pedestrians, supporting the expansion of transit service in Kenmore. We added equity and environmental impacts for the transportation system. Oh.
If any commissioner has a question, please feel free to jump in.
Of the major changes we made to the goals, we prioritized bicycle and pedestrian users and non-motorized connectivity. We included evolving technologies that took into account surface water, micromobility, and electric vehicles. We emphasized support for expanding transit services in Kenmore. And also we aligned our update with city plans, including the transition plan for ADA accessibility, pedestrian facilities plan, and the climate action plan. We added 2 new goals, goal 7 and goal 8. Goal 7 was equity in transportation, and goal 8 was minimizing effects on climate. And then
just for the record, is it a fair assumption that the goal 7 was run by the DEI consultant or someone along those lines?
So, I don't know the answer to that question. I would have to check with my consultant, Alicia, and can't ask her right now.
So this was...
Yeah,
okay.
our consultant did the whole policy and whatnot on that side.
I think she said that was...
I just don't recall.
Related. I just wanted to ask the question.
And I can definitely ask her
No
when
problem.
she gets back.
Let's move along.
So within the element, we didn't note any new transportation projects, didn't need any capacity increases. We did note that WashDOT is supposed to be level service D, but we have it as level service E. And a lot of that has to do with, there's a conflict with what WashDOT wants and what we want for our vision, and our vision we're saying takes priority, because a lot of the changes would require impacting our side roads, which we don't want to do, and we have control over that. So WashDOT won't be probably doing much of anything without our approval. And then we have level service F. We added that for our growth center. Just allows us to prioritize pedestrians and mobility and not emphasize vehicles. On our capital facilities plan, we updated the 6 and 20-year projects. We updated cost estimates. We aligned the projects with the new element. The projects address safety, mobility, or non-motorized mobility, and maintain the existing infrastructure. We included the pavement preservation plan, the transition plan for accessibility, pedestrian facilities plan, and we included those as elements within the facilities plan. And then we also indicated that there were, again, no projects needed to maintain the adopted level service for traffic. Just a little map there just to remind you of what the specific projects are within the facilities plan. All kind of pretty picture up there. We don't show the sidewalk or the pedestrian facilities plan, ADA, or pavement preservation projects because they are programs themselves. So we just highlight them as a bullet item at the bottom there. And that's it. Quick as I could do it.
Is there any questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, then and that is completion of your presentation, correct?
That is the completion, yes.
Okay. So the next point is that we need to identify elements of the transportation element that we wish to highlight to the council, and who would like to do that. Is there any commissioners that have a desire to discuss a particular part of this or present it? Commissioner Vanderland?
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to present a proposition here. We've got an awful lot that we're looking to put in front of the city council in a very short amount of time in a single meeting. So I'm wondering if this might warrant deviating from our practice in the past of having individual planning commission members speak. I'm not sure that we'd be able to stay within a time limit, and I'm not sure that we would be necessarily addressing the questions or concerns of the city council. So I'm wondering if we might be better off, just as we just saw, we had a staff walk through the highlights and then ask the city council if they had any questions, which then as planning commission members, we could address. I think we would have a better chance of getting through the agenda in the allotted time, and at the same time be focusing on issues that were truly of key interest to the city council.
Well, my understanding is that 2 of the elements are going in one night, and then the 3rd and the 4th are going to be in separate nights. Am I correct? Or did that get changed too?
Let me just pull up the council agenda forecast here.
And while you're doing that, once we're past the presentation to the council from the planning commission, do you not have another work session with the city council where the staff give a presentation?
The presentation we usually give to the council to kind of give an overview of what's going on before, and typically then the planning commission would either jump in with something. So we would always give a staff presentation, an overview of what the process has been, the public involvement has been, and what those major changes are in the elements. So we would do that to kind of set the stage. And in the past, the Planning Commission has kind of spoken to a particular aspect. You don't have to do that. It's entirely up to you. That's not required at all.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted some clarification.
Right, and then there is a follow-up meeting without the Planning Commission where the council can then get into any further discussion and give direction whether they want to accept the Planning Commission recommendation, or if they want to make any substantive changes, we'll then have to hold a second public hearing.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted clarification on that. So you were going to let us know whether it's 2 for 1 and 1 for 1 and 1 for 1.
That's the Three Musketeers. But on September 18th, you've got the transportation element. The council. On September 25th, you have the climate action element. So it's a week later. And then the public facilities and public utilities is in October.
16th or something like that.
Yes, on October 16th. So those are the 3 council dates.
So for the transportation, we have one night for that. And you get to lead us off there. And then, so is there, back to the original question, we do have time for highlighting any elements that the commissioners would like to highlight. Is this where your favorite, this is, well, you're gonna get it anyway, because I'm gonna make sure of that. The golf cart, yeah, I'll take care of the golf cart with him. He's going to talk about the golf cart, okay? Or alternative forms of transportation, so. Derek, I got you on one. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak to any particular item?
Is it possible if we can pull up the slide that says major changes, just so we can kind of go down the list and look that over as we're picking here?
Any particular slide, or just go to the beginning?
Let's see. So there was the goals, objectives, and then I think there was this one as well. Yeah. And it looks like these slides are a little bit different than the ones in the agenda.
Yes, they
The
are.
presentation in the agenda was the last presentation we provided with the public hearing, just for a more comprehensive reminder. This is just more of a snapshot of everything we've talked about.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
I know there was some discussion about level of service. I don't know if that's something that someone is interested in. Environmental impacts.
Commissioner van der Line's got his hand raised.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Commissioner
I'm sorry, I
van der Line
left
has
that up there by,
his- Oh,
let me get rid of that.
This is Commissioner Connery. Could I ask how long these presentations are? Because my concern again with Commissioner Vanderleen is, do we have enough time to be able to present all this information? I mean, in the past, I guess the question is about the past and how long these presentations have gone for and what the process is.
Yeah, we have enough time. In the last couple that I've been part of, each member has taken 1 to 3 minutes to highlight a specific area that individuals felt that they wanted to, individual commissioners felt they wanted to talk to. And the other situation was that the commission as a whole identified maybe 3 items, and then those were either volunteered for or arms were bent to take on one of those items. So we have time and to do this. We just don't want to take a lot of time.
That's correct, because you're not the only item on the agenda. So you're not the only item on the council's agenda. It's, so I'm sure they'd appreciate, John's probably going to give I would say probably no more than 15-minute presentation.
Did you say 50?
1-5,
Okay.
1-5, John, 1-5. And then, I would suggest probably no more than 15
Right.
minutes. So again, it's up to you. You can either decide you don't want to give a presentation, answer questions, or you can pick everybody speak, somebody speak. It's up to you. But I think we're trying to get that part of the agenda done so that the council can then ask questions, specific questions of the commission.
And each of you should know that when you're presenting a particular part, the council members love to ask you questions about that particular part.
Chair Thompson, Commissioner Lutzis has his hands up.
Oh, Commissioner Lutzis, please go ahead.
Sure, to get the ball rolling. It looks like there might be a couple of these that could be sort of bundled together, although we can discuss it too. But I was looking at emphasis / support of Kenmore as a high capacity transit community, as well as support for expanded transit service in Kenmore. I think both of those kind of go hand in hand, at least in my head. And I'd be happy to talk about those two, as well as any others if it's needed.
Is there any discussion, any volunteers for that item? He took his hand down. Boy, that was fast. Let's see. So we have a point about high capacity and expanded transit service. Are there any other suggestions of items that we might want to talk about other than alternative modes of transportation? I'm going to bring in a golf cart. I just warn you right now. Let's all bring it. No other points. Okay, Commissioner Banczewski.
Is prioritizing non-motorized mobility, does the alternative forms of transportation that doesn't necessarily fit there, does it? Because some of them are motorized. That's right. Okay.
That was more the bicycle.
Bicycles and walking. I would be happy to speak to prioritizing non-motorized mobility.
Non-motorized. That's Tracy on that. Down, so back to Commissioner Lutzis's idea of bringing up the high capacity and expanded transit service. Is there anyone who wishes to talk to that to the council?
I'm sorry, I meant to volunteer for that one.
Okay. So if there's no objections, I'll do a very quick overview, very quick. And then we have three individuals. Nathan with high capacity expanded transit service combined, Tracy with the non-motorized transportation, and of course, Mr. Golf Cart with alternative modes of transportation. Okay, so is there anything else to say about this? And if anyone has ideas for any of the four of us, feel free to email us on the city email, please. We don't do personal email here.
Correct.
All right, next item.
John? Next item is on the climate action element. And Nina is joining us. And again, it's the same thing that you just did for transportation. Nina can highlight some of the major changes of the climate action element. Also talk about some of the feedback that's been received since the Planning Commission recommendation. And then you can decide on if you want to make any individual presentations to the council. So I'm going to turn this over to Nina.
Oh, perfect. All right, so this element was last reviewed by Planning Commission on June 6th during the regular Planning Commission meeting. During that time, you all were able to see the last revisions that were done, and that did include that language of reduce and eliminate, which was revised to your satisfaction at that time. So we are not asking for any additional edits at this point, but to give you all an update, we have had the draft reviewed. We did the State Environmental Policy Act review, or SEPA review, and that was with a result of a determination of non-significance. So that means no, impactful negative impacts, I suppose, that would be a result of that plan. We have also received comments and review from the Department of Commerce. They have provided no required changes to be made to the draft. They did provide additional suggestions, some of which we have reviewed on our own, such as specific dates. Those are things that we have talked about at length. So we are not asking to have any of these suggestions added at this time, but this is noted in your packet, just so you are aware of the comments that have been provided. In addition to that, we are also having this reviewed by Puget Sound Regional Council, and we should receive any comments back from them, I believe, by the 19th of this month. So overall, no substantive changes or comments have been made by any of the reviewing parties thus far. As far as topic areas to cover during the city council meeting, we do have 15 goals in here, so I know that is a little bit difficult to pick out specific things, but I will also remind you that it is broken out into two general areas, and that is mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as community resiliency, being those two buckets that these goals and objectives do fall under. So if that provides any help in breaking out the items you'd like to talk about, that might be beneficial. But I would be open to any comments or suggestions for specific topic areas.
Just to make sure we all understand this. So the comments that you received from other governmental agencies, there will be no need to amend this element at the council or before the Planning Commission.
Correct. It's not required. However, council may want to look at the comments and determine if there's any desire to further strengthen any language. However, there is nothing that was deemed to be a significant change. So nothing is required. Our feedback has been very positive as far as this being well drafted and written, and they were only minor suggestions. However, no action is actually needed. It is at our discretion.
So the bottom line is you like to use the term strengthen. So we've met the criteria. It's just a matter of whether the council wishes to strengthen the criteria that based upon the suggestion, but it's not required. Correct?
Some of it is just adding detail, so it may not be necessarily that they're looking for, say, an accelerated timeline or something like that, which we've talked about in the past. It might just be fleshing out an idea so that there is some more clarity, perhaps. For instance, one of the suggestions was projecting those greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So that is just providing a little more refined detail in addition to what is already there. So that is up to us if we want to sort of get into the weeds on that and lay that out specifically. But that would be something that we provide to council to see if that would be beneficial, or if maybe we're getting a little too into the weeds on that.
If I remember, without the issue of the dates, we, as a planning commission, strengthened the language.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's all still there. All right.
Yes, that is all
Thank
still
you.
there.
All right. Commissioner Lutz's.
Quick question. You said that it was broken down, the climate action element, into two main buckets, resiliency and mitigation. Could you speak a little bit more on that, on kind of what you meant or what you had in mind in breaking that up, or just some examples? I'm just trying to put together, if I were to present it, what would I, or what would be some highlights to include based on our work that you had in mind?
Sure. So we don't actually list out in the draft, two distinct separate sections, but those are the two sort of pillars that are utilized here. So, when we're speaking to community resilience, we are talking about any policy that makes sure that infrastructure is long lasting, that we have support systems for our vulnerable communities. Those are all things that will fall into that category. Anything that is mitigation will be goals, objectives, and policies that specifically bring down those emissions. So we're talking about reductions in vehicle miles traveled from the transportation sector. We are talking about energy efficiency in our buildings. So does that sort of help break that out a little bit?
Yeah, thank you for that.
I think the good news on this is, the city has an adopted climate action plan, and that this element is consistent with the adopted climate action plan. This is the first element that the city has. We've not had one before. It's mandated. And I say we're in a fortunate position that we did have the climate action plan to guide development of these goals and policies.
I can touch that briefly enough and strongly enough in my opening comments. Thank you. Right, folks. Volunteers, any suggestions here?
This is Commissioner Kadri. My question, I'm looking at one section here for implementation, and I'm trying to figure out which category that would go into: community resiliency, mitigation, because it's hard for me to kind of separate just these two categories when I'm reading this, because it's a pretty extensive document, and just trying to separate these two, resiliency and mitigation, it's a little difficult. So I think the implementation part of this document is extremely important, which any suggestions as to where that would go between the two categories?
The implementation should be taking both categories into consideration. That's essentially just making sure that both of those elements are incorporated in how we get this work done. So in part, that implementation is going to be encompassed in the cap. And in part, it will be anything additional that we've identified that is not, that was not previously laid out in the cap. So that would be, updating those other elements to ensure that there's cohesion and consideration of climate elements, or the environmental justice audit was one that was identified that is not currently in the cap. So those are just the ways in which we would make sure that all of these goals are met. So it should, in theory, encapsulate resilience and mitigation in that sense.
So you're talking about pages 20 through 23. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
I was
what,
just pointing
Commissioner
that
Hadri
out.
had in
so-
mind.
Further I'm looking for volunteers here. Oh, Commissioner Benensis.
I find actually one of the Department of,
Speak up and.
sorry, speak right into it. Yeah, sorry, Dwight. I find one of the suggestions from the Department of Commerce to be particularly interesting in light of all the conversation we had about it. That's the third one, have implementation specific dates attached to the objectives and policies. And because we did spend a lot of time talking about that. So I think I would love to hear council's thought on that. I would personally love to have that be a talking point in our presentation. And then the other thing that we spent a lot of time talking about was an accelerated timeline. And so that's another talking point that I would love for us to raise before council. Oh, and then the last talking point I would love to see raised is it related to implementation, the need for funding.
Commissioner Lutzis.
Commissioner Bonazinski, are you volunteering for all three of those things, or are you?
Oh, you beat me to the question. That's it.
No, I wasn't volunteering necessarily. I was just raising topics that I would love to come up in our presentations, and I would be happy to take one. And I would also love to share.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
happy to
well,
share.
which one if you were to choose one, which one would you want?
Either the importance of accelerating the timeline or the importance of funding, I think.
Accelerated implementation timeline. I just heard a volunteer for that. Okay. Nathan,
were you chomping at the bit to volunteer for one?
Well, that one had crossed my mind as well, but I want you to take that one if you want that one.
I'm just as happy to talk about funding because that's really important.
I'll leave it up to you. I mean, I'm very passionate about accelerating that timeline just based on my own background.
I'll do funding and you do accelerated timeline. How about that?
I like that. That sounds good.
Okay, so now I'm gonna scratch this difference here.
Sorry to make you rewrite that, Dwight.
No, that's fine. We're just running through this. It's only 7:35 and we're almost done on number 2. So what was the one that you just volunteered for?
The importance of funding the implementation.
Okay, and I want to come back to that after we talk about the rest. If the commission would be okay with that. So do we have any further volunteers regarding community resiliency or mitigation issues?
This is Commissioner Cottery. I could focus on, I'm looking at goals 9 and 10 about ensuring that all all Kenmore community members are prepared for climate emergencies and outreach efforts that might be implemented through this. So I can certainly kind of focus on that if that is okay with the commissioner.
I don't hear any objections. So you've got goals 9 and 10.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, hearing none, then that means a quick introduction, plus we have Commissioner Quadri, we have Commissioner Banazinski, and we have Commissioner Lutzes. 2, 3. So let's, if we may, we had a considerable discussion about the importance of funding this, and we, as a commission, had considered putting together a memorandum of transmittal that is outside of the shall we say, the scope of the actually element, but with regard to how important it was for the council to consider full funding of the element in order for the element to be successful. This would be a document that would be transmitted as a supplement to the element, the official transmittal. Is there further discussion on whether we want, okay, Commissioner Vanderleen, I see your finger up.
Yes, just want to clarify, when we're talking about funding for the climate action plan, are we talking about, what's the extent of that? Is that to implement the entire plan? Is it to fund the staff, city staff that would be required to administer this? I just want to be careful we're not overreaching. Much of this is going to have to be funded outside of the city. The city obviously can't fund on its own all of the activities that were encompassed within the climate action plan. Much of that is going to rest on regional action and regional funding. What's the scope here that we're looking at for that funding? As I recall, when we talked about it, we were talking about limiting it to specifically to making sure that we had the staff on board funded to execute and administer and monitor our own city plan. But are we thinking about something beyond that?
If I can make,
Commissioner
I
Banazinski.
was going to say, if I could make a suggestion, because I think really, I think that the funding discussion is outside of the comp plan. And I understand that, you want to get this implemented. So maybe you could frame that at the council meeting that, the Planning Commission really supports the implementation measures and encourages council to fund the implementation to the fullest extent possible, something like that.
Or to make it a priority for funding, we could say that.
Something like that. I don't think you need to have a formal memo or something. I think this is something you could speak to at the council meeting, because really how it's funded, when it's funding, and the budget is a separate council discussion. So I wouldn't get into the details of you should fund staffing or you should fund ABC details. I would just leave it as that, this was something that the Planning Commission would strongly encourage, making this a priority, something like that.
I don't think that we were actually going to make a list of A, B, C, D, but we were, if I remember our discussion, we were concerned that we would like to, if with the adoption of the action plan and the adoption of this element, that we would like to see it take its due place in the priorities of the city and the funding of the city. Not, I know they never meant this, but not as an afterthought. Okay, I think that's part of our concerns.
For my part, I recall similarly to Chair Thompson, and also that I know that this is a priority for the city. Climate action is currently the number one priority, I think, still for this year. And council has had a lot of discussion about how to fund climate action. I think those of us who are, some of us who were watching it at the time were perhaps perceiving that the outcome didn't match kind of in word, it's the number one priority, but then the budget discussion kind of didn't place it in some of our minds, my mind, as a high priority. And I think that there's a gap there, which is understandable because how we are going to pay for things is a big question. Who's going to pay for it? It's a huge open question. But I think for me, it feels important that we acknowledge, like, our budgets should tell us what our priorities are really at the end of the day. And it feels like we've gone through all this work and we've spent a lot of time on words, and now it's time to insert that priority into the budget. And what exactly that means is, again, a lot of people are going to have a lot of different opinions about it, but I think the fact remains is that if we don't dedicate significant funds to this work, we're not going to get anywhere close to where we need to be. So those are the sorts of things that I had in mind when I was thinking about the importance of funding.
Are there any objections to the ideas and concepts that Commissioner Banaszewski just outlined? Is it the consensus of the commission that Commissioner Banaszewski can go ahead and draft her comments along those lines? Any objection? Hearing none, you have your walking papers,
Thank you, everyone.
right? Is there any, so to see here. So we've got your cell phone funding. Lucis on accelerated implementation timeline, is that correct? And Commissioner Cadre on goals 9 and 10. I have an overview. Okay, anyone else? Oh boy, it's 7:43 and we have number 3 to go. Ms. Bent, which one would you like us to do next?
Well, the next item is the public services element and draft utilities element, and Todd is joining me, and again, it'd be the same process as the last two. Can highlight some of the major changes. This should be fresher in your mind because you've only just done this. So I'll turn it over to Todd.
Okay.
Thank you, Debbie. Good evening. As Debbie said, I'm back again.
Welcome again
Thank
to
you.
our city and to the Planning Commissioner Frying Table.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
we have the heat turned really low tonight. So it's and you know, we're running on time.
That's right. Well, this shouldn't be a surprise to you since I've been here twice in your last two meetings, and it's been dedicated purely on public services and utilities. So, but for the sake of just recapturing kind of where we've been, we've had a number of changes on both elements. I'd say that probably the number one priority, and I'll speak about public services first. We had a couple of things regarding some updated maps, one of which was the patrol map was a little bit outdated. So good news is you'll see a freshly updated map in your new element there. And so that's good to see. The other thing, I'm just going to bring up my
And that's just before page 17, if I see that correct. Okay.
Yeah, so we, in the prior meeting, we did do some updates to the basic city of Kenmore map that had some old nomenclature, Kenmore Junior High School and whatnot. So we made changes to that. I think Twin Springs Park, we made some changes to that. But for this last one, we did an update to the patrol map. And then I just need to get my minutes here real quick, and just so I can scan through here, make sure I'm capturing. I think we also added UW, Bothell, and Cascadia to the mix, not just talking about Bastyr. And then we also mentioned some language about police services section, and we did that in 9/11. And then you also asked for us to provide the police memorandum in that when we do go to the council. That's upcoming on October 16th. That's pretty much it for that particular one. Now going to the utilities one.
Can we
sure.
just do one at a time? Please?
Absolutely.
Some of us get easily confused.
Yes.
Right. Any questions, first of all, from the commissioners? Well, that's a good sign. All right. So do any of the commissioners have some desires to speak to any of the elements? I would think Commissioner Convery wanted to talk about mental health, right? I don't mean to point you out. But
No, it's yeah, absolutely. As you may know, I'm very passionate about that. So I would be happy to take that on. And that meeting is set for October 16th, was it?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's one down. Next items on public services element. We're busy on this one. Nothing on police services. No one wants to talk about that. Oh, Commissioner Lutz, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about our updates to police services and maybe just in general emergency services. I know with fire, a lot of it was just updates, and I'm happy to just to update and say a lot of what we did updating here just reflects the merger between North Shore and Shoreline Fire Department and so forth. I don't think there's too much there, but maybe just kind of grouping in emergency services. But I'd be happy to do that.
All right.
As Commissioner Convery, I know we discussed that we will be submitting the police commissioner's memo. Is that something that will be discussed as part of police services as well? Because I think it was a very well-written memo. It answered a lot of questions, and I think it's important for us to be able to kind of address that as well.
I'm happy to talk on that and address that. I know since the council's already seen it and we've seen it, there's kind of that mutual understanding, but I'm happy to refer back to that, especially through our conversations that we had on it was that last meeting or the meeting before, or most recently. Yeah.
Good.
All right. Any other public service items that there was a question by a constituent with regard to the whole issue of future growth and school district planning. Is that an issue that I'm talking about? This is a constituent was concerned. School district was saying, gee, you've have all these new families and we don't have enough teachers and so forth to support them. What's your experience with that, Debbie? I mean, overall, you're going to get you're gonna get yours a little later tonight, but all of these years that you've been with us, what you've been hearing and what you've been seeing as far as growth in school services?
Well, I would say probably Todd's more able to speak, maybe a little bit than me, but I mean, I think we coordinate with the school district in terms of they know what the city's projected growth is, so they're planning for what growth is coming not only in Kenmore but for the other jurisdictions that they serve. They also adopt a capital plan like the city does to make sure that there are sufficient facilities. And how they come up with the student teacher ratios, that's a mystery to me, because that's what they do, not what we do.
Of course.
But there is the coordination there in terms of population growth. And they can then take a look at where that growth is occurring and do they have the right facilities to accommodate that growth. So that's kind of where the overlap is between what the city does in planning and what the school district does in planning. But in terms of student teacher ratios, I don't know.
Right, but what your position is as the lead director here is to say to us that they're fully aware what our growth projections are.
Yes.
And what are all the issues that surround that topic. So they're not in the dark at all.
No, they're completely aware of that. They know what the growth is. We share our capital plans. Their school district capital plan is part of the comprehensive plan. So yes, there is definitely coordination around growth and the need of facilities and resources to support that growth.
No,
Yeah,
no surprises.
I can directly speak to that since I was the primary person that did a lot of that work, or at least assisted with that for my short time there. But yeah, they're fully aware, and they did have, when I was there, 2 people that did that work. I'm not sure on what their plan is now, but I do know that they keep track of those statistics. They ask for information on an annual basis. They keep track of the plats that are actively happening. And so, as Debbie said, they have to do a capital facilities plan that's updated annually by state law. And so either annual or biannually, depends on the county. But yeah, they work with each jurisdiction that they serve, including Kenmore. Kenmore is one of their areas that has some growth in the downtown kind of core, but for the most part, definitely not as much as you would expect as like Bothell and Woodinville. But nonetheless, they still keep track.
That's what I figured. There's no surprises.
Yep.
They can't say that they've been surprised. So I'm just listening to a constituent of our city, and I felt the same way you did, but I felt the need to ask that question so that I'm not shooting from the hip. And thank you for that response. I might touch on that on the introduction, just to respond to any of the constituents that seem to have those concerns.
Oh, great.
So I can't imagine the school district putting their head in the sand about our zoning and development
I don't think
projects.
they're doing that.
All right. Any other? We have 2 topics: mental health and police and emergency. There's no other items. Okay, so we're going to leave it at that. And while we have a moment, just a moment, point of personal privilege, I understand that we have an anniversary young lady here this evening that happens to be sitting in front of us that has a 25th year anniversary as a public servant and a dedicated Director of Community Development, and God knows what else she does, and she probably does a lot that we don't know. But and you're not done, because we have little get-togethers for people who leave, but we also have get-togethers for people who have been here forever. Now, 25 years in the city of Kenmore. Yeah, I was going to say that's almost forever in our city. So I would like to recognize Debbie Bent for all of her wonderful service and her longevity. It means a lot to our citizens. It means a lot to those of us who volunteer on planning commissions, because we count on you to be able to pull up answers out of your deepest pockets when we ask you these questions that you don't know that are coming. And you're able to do it, and you stay calm and collected and smiling while you're doing it. And we really appreciate your service to us and to the city. So anyone else want to say something? This is the time that we can roast her publicly.
I prefer to get back to the utilities element.
Don't worry, some of us may not be reappointed, so.
I appreciate your very kind words, Chair Thompson. It's been my privilege to work and continue working for the city of Kenmore and see all the positive changes that have occurred over the last 25 years. So it's been my privilege to work on, be a part of that, and play a small part in those changes. So again, thank you very much. And I look forward to continuing my work, because I don't want it to make these sound like I'm not retiring.
Oh, you're going to stay
It
another,
might seem like, I've been here forever, but no, I'm not retiring.
are you
so
going to stay another 25 years?
I think I might be 6 feet under in another 25 years. But anyway, so again, thank you, but I'm going to call my own point of order and try and bring everybody back to the utilities element.
I think she's out of order. Well, but she hasn't been out of order for 25 years, so that's okay. All right, so congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, back to business at hand, and it's only 7:58. I want you to know, our 25-year veteran, that we're on the last item of business.
I appreciate that. And I'm sure Commissioner Codry does, as he's getting ready to catch a flight.
At 8, oh yeah, we're gonna be done
I
before
appreciate
you.
that. Thank you very much.
Well, he's gonna go on Zoom on the plane, All right, so now you can move on to the utilities element, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you, Chairman Thompson. Just quickly to go over some of the items from the last meeting. One of the things that we talked about at length was adding an option to explore a PUD option. If you recall, we had Mr. Culver came in and provided his comment, and we explored some options to add a new goal, and that new goal or policy was added, recommend actually a policy to U 3.1.10, and that was
Just give us a second to find it. It's on page 3.1 point. Did you say? I'm sorry.
It'd be 10 unless it got changed.
3.110. Okay, well, I'm looking here. Oh, I can't. Someone see it? On which page?
On page 10-20.
Excuse me.
page 10-20. And it's policy, is it policy U-3.1.7?
Oh,
Todd?
yes. My apologies.
Oh, 3.1.7. I did see that.
Yeah.
Okay, just a second, if you would. Let us find that. Let me find it.
3.1.7.
Okay, now is this a new language?
This is this was the language that Commissioner Vanderlyn suggested. We kind of massaged that language, and then that by unanimous, that was the language that we finalized with. So this should be the consensus. of
So
the
we
commission.
had already voted on this language.
Correct.
Yes, you
Yes.
voted on it at the last meeting. This is just reflecting
Yep.
that we added it into the element.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that was the primary topic of discussion for the utilities element. Let me go back to.
Okay, is there any issues with 3.1.7 from the commissioners? Are we good on that? Okay, so let's move ahead. Just reconfirming with the commission that we're all good.
And then just some other language that was changed slightly. We added the word safe to storage of batteries. That's a policy U 5.2.5. Actually, right before that, also 5.1.2, we added or similar program with contracted energy provider. So just kind of doing some clarification language that, during our discussion, we just wanted to strengthen a little bit of those policies. Other than that, we just made, as the commission gave staff permission to make any grammatical or numbering changes as needed. So that really was the bulk of the changes for the utilities element.
Thank you very much. So folks, where are we on this? Who would like to talk to any specific items? Don't rush or, to take one or not. I see Commissioner Banazinski is chomping at the bit over here to the right.
Yeah, this is actually a little bit of a diversion, but I'm stuck on policy 5.1.3. And it just said, it sounds like a directive: install solar panels, heat pumps, or other renewable or energy efficient methods to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets as identified in the city's CAP. And then I look at the objective and it says promote renewable and efficient energy methods. Is there did we miss a word there? Should it be promote the installation of, or I don't know, install solar panels where? I'm sorry, I just got stuck on that.
Well, I think what you're saying is the action verb is not exactly in line with the rest of the policies.
We could soften that language or just add that.
I think this is Commissioner Connery. I think if we just follow policy 5.1.2 and perhaps put the city should consider installing solar panels. And again, it's a little unclear as to where is it?
Where and who? I'm with you. Where and who?
Yeah.
Well, they can start with my house.
And that golf cart. I see the staff looking at their document, so that's why I'm not saying anything.
I mean, it says, this is just lack of knowledge, but it says as identified in the city's climate action plan. I would assume that this was also something that's referred to in the climate action plan. So not sure if this was created from that or added to this element because of that reference. Or we could do what Commissioner Quadri says is have a should consider language included in that policy. Or it could be removed.
Well,
But again, I don't know the history of that specific policy, unfortunately. I don't know if Debbie, you do.
I'd have to pull up the cap, but we
Oh.
could say something like promote. Or,
installation of,
yeah,
because the targets are identified in the cap. So we
Right.
don't have to worry about shooting in the dark. We know where our target is. So the administrative correction would be,
it would be they promote installation of solar panels, etc. So it would be deleting the first word install and replacing it with promote installation of.
Yeah.
so this would be a grammatical administrative change. Is there any objection to that happening from the commission? Okay, consider your pen writing that down. Okay.
Got it.
Got it. All right. Next item. We're still looking for you. Who's doing what for utilities?
I think I agree with Todd that discussion about exploring public utilities district is a salient point to raise with council. I do think too, we did spend a lot of time on transparency with how our current energy is being generated. And I think with the underlying goal of knowing where we're starting and knowing we need to do better in terms of green energy. So I think those are two important points. I'm already speaking twice. Are there other commissioners who would like to speak on those things?
I would be perfectly happy speaking on one of these points, but I would want a passionate partner on that as well.
I would be happy to help you write.
Okay, so we have, just so I can write down the correct point, which point are we discussing? You two discussing?
Well, I had raised two and I think they're related, but separable. One was the discussion about exploring the possibility of a public utility district for Kenmore. And the other had to do with being transparent in the element with how our electricity is currently being generated.
Yeah.
So that we can, with clear eyes, understand where we are and make changes to get where we need to be in terms of cleaner ways of generating electricity. So yeah, I think those are
I'd be-
two different points, I think.
Yeah, and I'd be on board with both of those.
They're related, but I think separable. All right.
Well,
Derek, you want to talk on both of those?
I think
Yeah, okay. I'll
bullet
help.
points
guys
for both.
figure it out. Okay. Okay. Any other hands up for any other items? boy. Oh, there we go. Commissioner Vanderlyn.
You may already be loaded up on this one, but I think this is actually one of the sections we spent the most time thinking through. I guess this is my issue, which I'd be happy to speak to, which is how do we need to ensure that our coding and regulation keeps pace with the change in technology. We know as we make the shift, we're going to have significant new infrastructure that's going to have to be built into our city, particularly our city being kind of a crossroads for many of these things, given its geological location. And we want to make sure that we protect public safety here, and at the same time that the coding and regulation is in place to facilitate that new infrastructure, and that it's consistent with our land use planning. I'm thinking particularly here about the battery example we talked about. There's going to be, I'm sure, national and state regulation on this, but there's going to be a considerable, I think, need to look at how do we place, how do we control, how do we manage, how do we write code for particularly the regional sorts of batteries that are going to need to be, that are quite large and can be quite invasive in a community, and also may have public safety issues. So I'd be happy to talk to that. Just in general, that as we make this transition and add all of this new technology, some of which is still evolving, that we're going to have to catch up our city code and regulations to ensure public safety and consistency with our land use planning.
All right, got you down on that. Any other topics for the utilities element that anyone wants to speak to? I don't see any further volunteers or ideas there, so we will call that done.
And what is the date on that one?
The date on that one?
October 16th.
No, that's both of them. So we're on 18th for transportation, 26th for climate action, and utility and services will be on the 16th. And it'll be the same format as we've done before.
Right.
Only you want us to be faster. I'm just kidding.
Sure.
This is 25 years. That's what my new nickname for you is. And next year will be 26.
I have to change my title then.
All right. All right. Let's see, back to my agenda. Let me pull my agenda here. Here we are. Further comments from the staff?
No, I think we're asking about cancelling the September 18th and October 3rd meetings. We're not ready to bring forward any new topics of discussion. And also in light that you have 3 council meetings coming up as well, we thought we'd try and even it out a little bit by reducing the planning commission meetings.
So September 18th and October
3rd.
Is-
3rd.
Is that-
right? Not 3rd.
Is that going to be the 18th or the 19th? I think the 18th is a Monday.
Hold on a
It's the
second.
19th.
I was going off the agenda. Let me pull up the calendar here. Excuse me. It's September 19th and October 3rd.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion for that. Cancel the meetings of Commissioner Vanderlyn.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that the Planning Commission meeting, regular meetings for September 19th and October 3rd, 2023 be canceled. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Wow, okay, so that's the last piece of real business from that side of the dais, correct?
Correct.
Wonderful. Okay, is there anything for the good of the order? Commissioner Vanderling.
Update on where we are with finding new planning commissioners, fill the empty spaces.
We have a September 30th deadline for applications, and that would include those of commissioners who wish to be reappointed, whose terms are up on December 31st. And then my understanding is that there's going to be interviews in November.
It's probably going to be, yes, probably the first week in November, I believe. So there's going to be a meeting in October where the council kind of determines it. We don't know how many applicants are going to get. The application period is open through September. And then council will then decide based on the number of applicants, if they interview everybody, or if we have
Just like last
a
time.
ton, then they'll narrow it down and then they'll interview. But my guess it would be the first week in November for interviews.
Could I ask which terms are ending, which commission terms?
It's myself, Commissioner Banazinski, Commissioner Lutzis, and Commissioner Vanderling.
Nope.
Nope. Oh, that's right.
You're making Mike go a year early.
No, I'm sorry.
So we have a vacant position, so.
Oh,
it's-
the vacant,
yeah.
okay. Okay, I'm sorry, Mike. I thought you were brought on when we were.
Trying to put ideas in my head.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, so the empty seat. I do have that open. Yes, I do have that one here. Okay, so those are the 4 positions.
Correct.
Okay. So Mike, you're not up. It's just, if you were worried, now it's straight. No, I'm just kidding.
So the other 3 terms would be up at the end of 2024.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any further items for the good of the order? Okay, and so I'll be polling folks to figure out when we can have a 25-year celebration for our director. Go ahead.
I just have a question of clarification for my own interest, maybe for the public interest. So is the open seat, they'll interview and be appointed with those
Yes.
for the next term? And does their term expire in 2024?
No.
No.
So the 3 terms that are up in the vacant position, those will be appointed for a 3-year term
Okay.
starting in 2024.
Okay, all of us the same. Okay,
All of
great.
us the same. And then the other 3 will expire at the end of 2024. Commissioner Cardry was filling a term, so he doesn't get the full 3 because he was
I
filling
see.
a term. But that's the kind of the role.
Yeah.
The role. It's like 4 and 3
Thank you.
terms. Yeah.
And I'll say we have 5 applications already, so that's good.
Wonderful. All right. So we have no further, so our next meeting will be
The 3rd Tuesday in October.
the 13th,
The 3rd Tuesday again. I've
3rd
got it,
Tuesday of October.
which will be.
October 17th.
And I think that the plan, and we'll see if we can get there, is to bring up some background information perhaps for the economic element and the downtown element.
We have no further elements to take action on before the end of the year, correct?
Correct.
All right. There is no further business before the Plan Commission. I will now adjourn the Planning Commission meeting for tonight. And everyone have a good evening, good flight to you. And Mike, don't get lost in your house, okay? All right.
Thank you,
I have a
Brian.
map.
The meeting's adjourned.
All right, guys, have a good night. Thank you.